With each passing day that Matt Martin and Cal Clutterbuck are unsigned, the question becomes, who will take over as the Islanders enforcer this coming season? We're going to talk about that and a lot more next on the Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Friday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs are further in our rearview mirror, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Busy show ahead, lots to talk about. But first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question for me, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, send us an email to lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name, where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever it is that's on your mind. You can also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long during the offseason. That's hirings, firings, trade rumors, free agency, arbitration, the draft. If it's happening to the New York Islanders, we'll talk about it here on the Locked On Islanders podcast. And it's always great to talk a little Isles hockey with you, game time or any time. So we know the Islanders are now over the cap, technically, as of right now. And you're allowed during the offseason to be up to 10% over the cap. And that's where the Islanders find themselves. So if nothing changes between now and opening day, we know that this is only going to be a 22-man roster. Now, again, lots can change. But the other thing is, with each passing day as we get closer to training camp, Matt Martin, who has been serving as the Islanders' enforcer, less and less likely to be back. Ross Johnston let go last offseason. Cal Clutterbuck, who isn't really an enforcer, but certainly can be a tough guy and will stand up for his teammates when called upon, also unsigned and less likely to be back with each passing day as we get closer to the start of training camp and the new season. So the question now becomes, who takes over as the Islanders enforcer? And again, as of right now, there is no cap room to bring in somebody else. You look back at last year. The Islanders had 13 fights in 82 regular season games and 1 fight in 5 playoff games. The playoff fight, by the way, was Kyle McLean. He had the playoff fight. In the regular season, Matt Martin led the way 5 of the team's 13 playoff fights. The only other player to have multiple fights during the year was the captain, Anders Lee. He had 2. Having 1, Adam Pelech. He had 1. Scott Mayfield, Bo Horvat, Kyle McLean, and J.G. Pageau. Overall, if you get rid of the 5 fights had by Matt Martin, you've got this hole. And look, we know fighting is not as big a part of the game of hockey at the NHL level, certainly than it was in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It's been on a downward trajectory. But let's face it, hockey is still a game that involves intimidation, and physicality. And whether it's the need to rally your players because your team is playing poorly, whether it's to stand up for a teammate who just took a cheap shot, or, you know, an opponent took liberties with one of your star players, Matthew Barzal, for example, gets hit from behind. You want somebody on the ice to be out there saying, hey, no good. We're not letting you do that. If you're going to take liberties like that with Bo Horvat or Matthew Barzal, you're going to have to deal with me. I would say that the candidates on the current roster kind of all have issues. Not that they can't do the job, but for example, two guys who I think might be higher on the list of candidates. Scott Mayfield, who only played in 41 games last year, and in 40 of them was dealing with a busted ankle, so he wasn't really himself. He certainly is capable of standing up for his teammates and, if necessary, dropping the gloves. However, you don't want him injured again. And, you know, so you sort of have to take that with a little grain of salt. And then, to me, the other guy who immediately comes to mind is the captain, Anders Lee. And I'll tell you why. Assuming he makes the team, Anders Lee has a $7 million cap hit. And it looks like at this stage of his career, based on the way he skates, based on the way he's been playing, even though, admittedly, Anders Lee played well in the last 2 or 3 games of the regular season and in the playoffs, he's not a top 6 forward anymore, at least not even on an average offensive team. If he's going to be in your bottom 6, whether it's third line or fourth line, a guy with his size and his punching ability, in my mind, go for it. Let Anders Lee, as the captain, show some leadership and, when necessary, stick up for his teammates. I think Kyle McLean, who, again, you know, only played in 32 regular season games and then in the playoffs. The fact that in those 37 games he had 2 fights, so if you double that, it's 4. I think McLean is also a candidate to take that role if necessary. But after that, you know, you don't want to lose Adam Pelech or Ryan Pollock, both of them dealing with injury histories. I don't think you want to lose Alexander Romanov for 5 minutes at a time. Hudson Fasching, I don't think it's really his strong point, although I think he's certainly capable. Samuel Bolduc has size, but not sure he has, you know, a lot of physicality or is eager to drop the gloves over the course of his history. There is a gap here. So if I'm ranking players right now, it would be Mayfield, Lee, McLean as my top 3. Again, if the Islanders and Lou Lamoriello want to go out and add a guy who is going to be sort of the next Matt Martin, usually a fourth line player who's going to be your enforcer doesn't have a huge cap hit. And the Islanders could probably sign someone for $1 million or less to fill that role if they feel nobody on the roster really fits the bill. But right now, for an enforcer, you know, those would be my top candidates. Now, the other thing is this, and I'm going to discuss this on one of the shows next week. When you look at the Islanders from a year ago, you're losing 2 of your top 5 hits leaders from last year. If Clutterbuck, who was number 1, and Martin, who was number 5, despite only playing 57 games, are not back. So it's not just dropping the gloves, but who's going to bring the physicality? We're going to talk about that on a show next week. Make sure you join us for that. But as far as dropping the gloves and defending your teammates, those are my top 3 candidates. Love to hear from you. And we're going to put a poll up on the YouTube page and see who you feel, based on only the guys who are on the current roster, who should be the protector of the New York Islanders next season. And, maybe Oliver Wahlstrom fits that bill if he's still on the team, although not sure that that's likely, but we'll see. So, still a lot more to get to on today's show. The World Juniors Summer Showcase continues, and we've got some good updates on both Islanders players, including Cole Eiserman, who are involved in that, and some good news on the broadcasting front for the Islanders. We'll have that. And for our Islanders birthday of the day, a center who was with the Islanders for their first season and a little bit in their second season. We'll talk about him as our Islanders birthday of the day. Let's see if you can guess that is. And one more small clue. Unfortunately, he is deceased. We're going to have that and a lot more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube with a free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, the World Junior Showcase still going on, the Summer Showcase. Let's be frank about that. And, the Islanders' 2 prospects who are actively on the ice getting the job done on Wednesday. Basically, you've got Cole Eiserman scoring his first goal on a one-timer after a nice setup by James Higgins. And that, again, some more solid play for Eiserman on Team USA. Now, Danny Nelson, by the way, the Islanders' second-round pick and first pick in the 2023 NHL draft, he's been at camp, did not play in any of the games so far, but is expected to make the roster for Team USA in the fall. Eiserman playing left wing alongside of Buffalo Sabres draft pick Brody Zemer and James Higgins. And again, Higgins forcing the turnover and setting a pass over to Cole Eiserman on the one-timer. Now, it's interesting because Higgins going to play at BC, Eiserman at BU, so they're going to be rivals once the college season starts. But as of right now, they are teammates. Meanwhile, over at Team Finland, Jesse Nurmi, the New York Islanders prospect, a 3-point game, an empty net goal, and a pair of assists in Finland's 5-3 win over the United States. He now has 5 points in 3 games, 1 goal, 4 helpers. And that is really exciting. Now, there's still 2 games left for both Team USA and Team Finland, 1 against Sweden and 1 against Team Canada. So, again, clearly some more chances over this summer to have these prospects get more experience and more exposure to scouts, coaches, and to play against the top competition in their age group around the world. To me, that is a huge, huge bonus for these players. And, Danny Nelson, you really would like to see him out on the ice. But the fact that when the actual World Juniors tournament takes place in the winter, in December and into January, the fact that he is likely to be, competing for Team USA there, more important to have him play in the actual tournament than in the summer showcase, but nice, certainly, to have him in the summer showcase. So good to see all of this going on. And, I just love it. I absolutely love seeing that. Meanwhile, over in the Beauty League in Minnesota, Anders Lee and Brock Nelson basically going head to head. And that was a week ago. Well, earlier this week, Wednesday, there was Anders Lee going one-on-one and scoring a no-look 5-hole goal on Canadians prospect Kazimir Koskisuo. So a pretty goal. And right now in 2 games, playing in the Beauty League, 2 goals, 1 assist for Anders Lee. Now, everydayers, we've talked a little bit about the Beauty League earlier, but it's a 4-on-4 hockey league that is kind of informal, that mostly involves players who live in or, go to Minnesota over the summer, and it allows them to stay sharp and work on their skills and their game. It's more like shinny than it is like an NHL hockey game. Not checking, not 5-on-5. You're not going to see fights or anything like that. But again, good to see the captain, Anders Lee, going out there and getting the job done on the ice, being productive. By the way, Mike Reilly also in action. He had 2 assists in his last game for Team Anderson, although Team Anderson lost that game by a final score of 13-11. So again, good to see these guys out there on the ice, and you can watch both the World Junior Championships and the Beauty League. Just, get on your browser, do a little searching, and you can see, some of these players doing their thing and get a little hockey over the summer to scratch that itch that we're dealing with, where we're hungry for hockey and it just isn't there. One other thing this week, a little anniversary, I just wanted to mention it briefly. 13 years ago this week, the referendum to refurbish and rebuild the Nassau Coliseum that Charles Wang was trying to get passed, defeated at the ballot box, and that ended up leading to the Islanders playing in the Barclays Center and then eventually, going to UBS, but leaving the Nassau Coliseum. And now Nassau Coliseum site looks like is going to be leased to a casino. So kind of sad that the Nassau Coliseum not going to be what it was anymore. And sort of a sad anniversary. I do remember covering that night and the sadness that we all experienced while covering it. All right, a lot more to get to on today's show. Some good news in the broadcasting booth for the New York Islanders. We'll talk a little bit about that. Plus, our Islanders birthday of the day. All that and more still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But with the NBA and Stanley Cup playoffs in our rearview mirror, there just aren't as many games. So I just know I can go to FanDuel and they'll help me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And even, this summer, FanDuel, they're hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Look, you've got Major League Baseball, Met fan, Yankee fan. Check out the latest odds. Preseason football actually started on Thursday with the Hall of Fame game. You got football futures also, and you've got the summer games in Paris going on as well. So head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. A little bit of good news concerning the Islanders in the broadcast booth. And look, let's face it, we need as much good news for the New York Islanders as possible. And the good news is that MSG Network has locked up Brendan Burke. He will be back in the booth this fall and winter and spring calling New York Islander games. And that is absolutely great. He has been with the Islanders as their play-by-play man since 2016. He's been there for 8 seasons. And look, we have watched as Burke kind of did more than just Islander games. National broadcast with TNT, for example. Done some work with the Yankees and Big Ten football and, some pregame work for Peacock. All of these things he's been working on. Now, his contract with MSG Network expired at the end of last season. And, all of a sudden you're like, what's going to happen? Because let's face it, there is no doubt about it that Brendan Burke and Butch Goring make up a great tandem in the booth. And then, Shannon Hogan and Thomas Hickey, you got great in-between period, pregame, postgame, and then a great announcer combination for the booth. So to me, overall, really, really great to hear that Brendan Burke will be back with the Islanders this season. Now, we don't have details on the contract, how long it is for. Obviously, there will exist the possibility that Brendan Burke could end up somewhere else in a year or two. I think it's fairly safe to say there will be games he's going to miss as a result of, network conflicts, whether it's TNT, to call other hockey games, whether he ends up also pulling like a Howie Rose where he's doing baseball and hockey and sort of has to figure things out in April and October. We'll see about that as well. But to me, bottom line, Brendan Burke, Butch Goring, going to be back with MSG Network calling Islander games. And, that's yet another reason. I'll be honest with you. It's another reason why games that are on ESPN Plus or TNT, where we don't have Butch and Brendan, not the same. And Islander fans always complaining, we don't have good announcers for this game. it is really great to know that Brendan Burke is going to be back doing Islanders broadcasts again this coming season. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And today, well, not today, but, well, yes, today would have been the 76th birthday of former Islanders forward Brian Marchenko, the Weyburn, Saskatchewan native, 6 feet, 180 pounds, was not drafted, but made his NHL debut with the Maple Leafs in 1970-71, joined the Islanders in their very first season of 72-73, spent some time in the AHL with the New Haven Nighthawks, but played 36 games for the Islanders, had 2 goals, 8 points, and was only a -10 in 36 games. And for a team that won 12 out of 78 games, that's pretty impressive. Played 6 more games for the Islanders the following season, but spent most of the year in the Central Hockey League, and then finished out his career in the minors. Was actually a member of the Johnstown Jets, for those of you who are Slapshot fans, for part of the 76-77 season. So, he certainly was involved in some of those. Those were exaggerated hijinks in Slapshot, but not that exaggerated, okay? Looking back at one of his better games as an Islander, March 17th, 1973, at what was then the New Barn in the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum. Islanders hosting the St. Louis Blues. Wayne Stevenson, the goalie for the Blues. Jerry Desjardins, the goalie for the New York Islanders. And in this game, our Islanders' birthday of the day, Brian Marchenko scores his first career NHL goal. It comes 3 minutes and 18 seconds into the third period. And it gives the Islanders what was at that point a 5-3 lead. And Bob Nystrom ends up assisting. An empty net goal by Neil Nicholson clinches it with 3 seconds left. This was only, keep in mind, March 17th. This was the 10th win in Islanders history. They went 10, 58, and 5 at that point on their way to winning just 2 more games the rest of the way. For Brian Marchenko, our Islanders' birthday of the day, he had a goal. He was a -1. He had 2 shots on goal, and he had the game winner. And, of course, as I mentioned, it was his first career NHL goal. 2 goals and an assist for Tom Miller led the Islanders' attack. But overall, for Brian Marchenko, who unfortunately passed away very young, died at the age of 65 back in 2014, he is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everybody who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. We'll be back on Monday. We'll talk a little bit more about hits and physicality and what that'll mean for the Islanders. Any news on Oliver Wahlstrom, we'll talk about that, or any other pending news for the Islanders, and we'll start to look at some Islanders draft picks again. We are on our summer schedule, so it's shows Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, unless there's some big breaking news, and we'll do a bonus episode and get right to work on those. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.